The AFL Gather Round is in one round each year, a state from around Australia hosts a festival of football in that state only. So far, only South Australia has hosted Gather Round. In a couple of years' time, it will give another state a chance to host this round. So, following up from a video I made about a year ago, which was what would an AFL Gather Round look like in both New South Wales and the ACT, I thought, let's have a look at the football fanatic state in Victoria and see what an AFL Gather Round would look like there, with what stadiums would host it, what teams would wear, and who they would verse, plus a fixture. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into it. Now, I'm talking about this first, folks, because I'm actually going to change a couple things about this Gather Round. It will definitely still be Gather Round, don't get me wrong about that, but I'm also going to kind of rename it to something different that I've actually kind of had the idea for a very long time. In fact, it will be a Gather Round, but I've decided as well that the Gather Round that will be held in Victoria for the AFL will also be named Heritage Round. Now, yes, all games are still being played in Victoria, but I just kind of feel like we're going to try and rename it to Heritage Round, because it's been a long time since all teams have played in one state, being in Victoria, of course. So it's probably been since the 80s since that last occurred. So I thought, let's rename it to Heritage Round. So basically, all Victorian clubs, well, not all Victorian clubs, but the majority of Victorian clubs will be playing each other, but some will be playing other oppositions that they had a bit of history with that venue or who that team they're versing. So obviously all around Victoria, there's so many different venues that can be played at, whether it's the big stadiums in the city like your MCGs, your Marvels, or your regional stadiums like Mildura, Wangaratta, Moorabbin Oval, you name it. Just so many other stadiums that could hold this. So I've come up with a variety here of this list. I've got two lists. So the first list I'll be going through is a list of the stadiums that are most likely going to have a game of Gather Round or Heritage Round played at these venues. And here's list one of the most common venues that I reckon will be having a Heritage/Gather Round game being played at if it was held in Victoria. So those, in my opinion, they're the front runners of who I think will be holding Gather Round, or sorry, what stadiums will be holding Gather Round. But these venues here are a slight chance I feel of getting a Gather Round game, but not quite making that top list. So with that list I've went through, I've now given you all an idea of what stadiums will kind of be holding Gather Round games / Heritage Round games, but now it's time to look at the fixture that I've come up with. Let's get into it. Kicking things off on the Thursday night at the MCG, no better venue to hold it as well, to get Gather Round in Victoria kicked off. And this one, to start it all off, I've got Melbourne to take on Essendon. I've chosen these two to play together and started off because simply in the VFA season, well, first VFA season, not the VFL or the AFL, I'm specifically saying VFA. In 1896 in round one, Melbourne took on Essendon at the MCG, and obviously it was the first kind of unofficial season of the VFL/AFL. I'm just thinking it would probably be right to hold these two together if it is a heritage game, and there's a bit of reasoning behind that why I've got Melbourne Essendon to hold the first Gather Round game in Victoria. Now to the two Friday games, we're going to Princes Park of all places. That is right, for the next Heritage Round game. And starting at 4 p.m. with the Hawks and the Lions at Princes Park. And don't get me wrong, I know Hawthorn have their big army and Brisbane have theirs and stuff like the old Fitzroy faithful, but the Lions, they called this place home when they were really struggling financially, when they were kicked out of the Junction Oval or Brunswick Street. And the Hawks as well, when they left Glenferrie, they had to play here at Princes Park as well. And so I thought these two teams, they were kind of playing at Princes Park at the same time as each other. And so for a bit of heritage, we're going to have these two teams play each other in Heritage Round / Gather Round. Friday night, we're going back to the MCG for two OG Victorian sides. It doesn't get any bigger than this, and it wouldn't be right to have a Heritage Round and not have these two arch rivals play each other. This is on the Friday night, 7:50 p.m. at the MCG, Carlton and Collingwood. This game is a guaranteed sellout, that is for sure. Both fan bases, they'll fill the MCG up, get around to support their side, maybe a couple non-Carlton Collingwood fans as well. The stands are just going to be absolutely buzzing. They're going to be loud as, folks. It sums it up here. It's the longest lasting rivalry in VFL AFL history. Everyone knows how much these two teams hate each other as well. It's Gather Round. It would just be an absolute honour and an absolute pleasure to see Carlton and Collingwood in Gather Round at the MCG for Victoria. Saturday afternoon now, weird sort of venue to see an AFL game played at, but it is Gather Round or Heritage Round, and the temporary stands will definitely be out for this one to see the Saints and the Kangaroos at Moorabbin Oval at 1:45 p.m. It's absolutely crazy. Games for premiership points have not been played at this venue for a very, very long time for AFL standards, not AFLW specifically, but AFL standards. I kind of feel like the Saints and the Kangaroos, they're probably the right teams to play because they've had a couple real shocker seasons in those 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s. The list goes on for those two. I just think it would be a good matchup. They probably don't have the highest amount of members, the Saints and the Roos, so maybe chucking him at Moorabbin Oval wouldn't be too bad of an idea and get some people down there for this heritage game at Moorabbin. Obviously, RCA Park only holds about 7,000 people, so the temporary grandstands will definitely be out on the hill on that wing side near the scoreboard. And I just kind of feel like the two marble-based sides, because obviously they've been relegated to marble because of memberships and whatnot. I think that's how it works at least. The Roos, they're definitely going to be playing a game at Arden Street. That is definitely for sure. So we'll chuck them at Moorabbin Oval and yeah, we'll go from there. Now to the Saturday twilight. It's a weird sort of matchup by all means. A really odd one to play their Gather Round games against each other. And the MCG as well. It's a weird sort of game to see Adelaide and Freo play each other. Oh, I just said the game. Adelaide and Freo, the MCG at 4:35 p.m. on the Saturday. Now, Adelaide and Freo, I've put these two together simply because they're the two teams that show the most in retro and heritage kind of themed things. Like in recent years, we saw Adelaide, they brought back the retro crow. Freo for the last couple of years, they're probably the most involved with retro kits with that anchor and the purple and the green design. Yeah, ever really since 2020, the Dockers, they've just always been involved with the retro rounds and whatnot, trying to bring it back with that retro anchors. And look, seeing as it's Gather Round and these two teams show the most interest in heritage-based things, I thought Adelaide and Freo would be perfect for a matchup in Gather Round. Then it is a huge night for these two after Adelaide and Freo also being played at the G right after. Two more Victorian sides in Richmond and Geelong to go head-to-head at 7:25 at the MCG. Lately, it's been these two clubs that have really been getting involved in the finals, but have also played in many huge and close games. It would overall just be a huge matchup for this occasion. These two clubs have played in many big games, elite grand finals over the years being in 2020, 1967 and 1931 respectively. It just makes it a whole lot better. So Richmond and Geelong, I've chucked into playing Heritage/Gather Round in 2020, or whenever it comes around. We move to the Sunday games now, and on Sunday afternoon, after a failure of games in Adelaide between these two, they're instead going to be playing games against each other in Victoria for this Gather Round/Heritage Round, and this is at Princes Park at 1 o'clock. No better time. It'll be between Gold Coast and GWS. And I reckon that's fair too. Not many members between them. It's Gather Round, not much history. Money could be on the line here. Putting these two sides together, I just kind of feel like would kind of bring away that boringness for these two when they play each other later on the season. And yeah, just be a little bit more interesting, I guess. And they probably get more crowds in too. To another venue that is going to see Gather Round played here as well. And this time we're going to the Whitten Oval at 3:20 p.m. on the Sunday still. To what was meant to be the last game played between these two sides, it's not meant to be for premiership points anymore because they're going to play in Gather Round as well. This is the Western Bulldogs and the West Coast Eagles. I think it's only right if the Whitten Oval was going to have another AFL game here played for premiership points, it would have to be between the Western Bulldogs and the West Coast Eagles. As I said, because it was meant to be the last game ever played the Whitten Oval for AFL premiership points, and these two were the last two teams to play here for premiership points in the AFL season. That was in 1997, and obviously a redevelopment took place to the venue quite some time after that. And without the temporary stands, it only holds 18,000 people, the Whitten Oval, so they'll definitely put those temporary stands on the hillside of the ground. Those temporary stands will probably have to go on the wing of the ground where that hill area is, where you kind of see the play on the camera on the TV. And then, yeah, just probably boost up the crowd numbers to about 40,000. There's no way it's happening. 30,000 at least at the Whitten Oval if there were temporary stands. It would just be great to see footy be playing the Whitten Oval again. They kind of deserve it as well, the Dogs. They put in so much to this venue, so many redevelopments and so much money as well. It's their spiritual home, it's their AFLW home, and I reckon they can get one last game here at the Whitten Oval before it is fully gone for AFL premiership points. And now the final game of Gather Round. We end at the G at 6 p.m. to finish it all off between the Swans and the Power. Originally, I was actually going to have this game at the Lakeside Stadium, the old South Melbourne Swans home ground, but it would just be way too much work to get footy played there again, obviously because of the running track. It's now a soccer pitch basically, and it's basically just a rectangular stadium, so it'd just be kind of impossible to see footy played there again. But Sydney, they're definitely going to rock up in their South Melbourne kit, and Port Adelaide potentially might be playing in the Prison Bars. There's no real history between these two sides, but between themselves, as an individual club, they both have a lot of history, obviously, because Sydney were South Melbourne and Port Adelaide had the Port Adelaide Magpies colours with the prison bars, and then obviously that rival with Collingwood, because if they were playing Collingwood in Victorian Gather Round, it would go off. But yeah, to end that Gather Round, I've got Sydney and Port Adelaide. Just kind of felt like it was right. Two non-Victorian clubs and a lot of history between them for Heritage Round. And so here is my official Victorian Gather Round fixture. The D's and the Dons at the G on the Thursday night. Hawthorn and Brisbane then at Princes Park at 4 p.m. on the Friday arvo. Carlton and Collingwood, huge clash at the MCG on that Friday night. Then to St Kilda and North Melbourne on the Saturday in Moorabbin. Adelaide and Fremantle at the MCG for a twilight clash. Then the Tigers and the Cats battling it out on the Saturday night at 7:25 at the G as well. Moving to Sunday for the Giants and the Suns at Princes Park. Then a more unlikely game we have is the Doggies and the Eagles play at a Stanfield Witten Oval. And then to wrap up Gather Round is the Swans and the Power at the G. Now let's have a look at the Guernseys that I've predicted each team will wear for Gather Round. Let's go. So for Adelaide, I've got their 2023 Gather Round jersey. It looks really good on them, and I reckon they'll wear it again throughout Gather Rounds for years to come. For Brisbane, I've got the Fitzroy Retro top, believe it or not, because obviously it's Victoria, and Fitzroy obviously used to wear that kind of orange-looking colour on their top, and so I reckon they'll kind of bring that back. Carlton, I reckon they're just going to wear a regular jersey. Same with Collingwood as well. Essendon, I reckon they'll wear a regular Guernsey, but I feel like the sash is going to be smaller thanks to the heritage. Because Carlton and Collingwood, they didn't really have any smaller sashes or logos and whatnot on their tops, so I reckon Essendon, they'll have a smaller sash. For Freo, I reckon they'll bring back the 2022 retro top with the 3D anchor. I don't reckon they'll bring back the green top in a way like where it's green on the top right and left, and then purple on the bottom with the white anchor in the middle. I reckon they'll just go back to the retro 2022 3D jersey. As for Geelong, it's kind of controversial, but the 2023 retro jersey for them seems about right for Heritage Round. As for Gold Coast and GWS, both will be wearing their regular jerseys. They do have a bit of history with their jerseys in the NAB League and the VFL, but it's a bit too complicated for them to, bring that back. Hawthorn, well, let's just pray they're not wearing that blue retro top that they wore in that pre-season / Heritage Round. That was an absolute nightmare. But for the Hawks, I've got their 2000 to 2013 pre-season jersey. It was a really cool design, and seeing as they kept it for 14 years, they might bring it back for Gather Round, and it would be rightfully so for this Heritage Round. As for Melbourne, I can't really see them doing anything too special, so I'll keep them at a regular Guernsey. As for the Roos, I reckon the retro kangaroo is the right option for them. Port Adelaide, I reckon the prison bars is what they're going to go with. However, if they don't get away with that, I'm going to give them the clash jersey just to wear that during Gather Round against the Swannies. Richmond will probably wear their regular jersey unless it's a clash, which I doubt they will wear. Speaking of clash tops, I'm going to give the Saints their retro clash top that they wore in 2022, 23 and 24. As for Sydney, I have their South Melbourne Guernsey with the red V and the white background. I reckon that's probably a good idea and good thinking as well. It's Heritage Round, and South Melbourne is their history, the Sydney Swans, so it'd just be right to wear South Melbourne. Another controversial one here I have for West Coast is the retro eagle. Not this one instead, with the orange eagle coming out of the side, really fierce, about to attack a prey or whatnot. It looks really, really cool. It's an old top, and I reckon they could bring that into Gather Round as well. And as for the Western Bulldogs, I had the retro Bulldog. Should be pretty obvious there. It was the last Guernsey they wore when they said goodbye to the Witten Oval. Well, we thought was going to be goodbye to the Witten Oval. It was the last Guernsey they wore there. And versing West Coast, they wore that as well. Anyway, guys, that is going to wrap up today's video for what would an AFL Gather Round look like in Victoria. Now, if you did enjoy today's video and would like to see a part 3 of all states around Australia of what an AFL Gather Round would look like there, do leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what state you want me to cover next for what an AFL Gather Round would look like there. And the comment with the most likes is the state that I'll cover next for what an AFL Gather Round would look like there. Anyway, guys, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See you.